Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome. I am Bria and I'm going to be facilitating this panel. I am filling in for Damari because of internet issues, so I did let some people know Damari would be here. I apologize. She did her best but didn't want to be interrupted if internet cut her off. But I have her questions, and then we are taking all questions from everyone watching here today. So if you want to drop those in the chat at any point, I will do my best to collect them and keep them for the Q&A time. If I miss something, go ahead and nudge me, drop the question again. I'm doing a lot of things at once, so I might miss some things. I am here with Ira X and Jalen, and Dominique should be joining us soon. But for now, let's go ahead and introduce yourselves. Ira X, do you want to start?
What do you think, Jalen? You or me first?
You can go first.
All right. I'm Ira X. I use they and he pronouns. I'm here on Ohlone land, aka Oakland, California. And I am a healer and artist and activist. And I am parent to 15-year-old twins who homeschooled and unschooled for about 5 years, and then we community schooled for a couple of years, and then they decided to go back to traditional schooling, and it's been a wild ride. So I'm really glad to be here with you all, and really glad to be following my kids' lead and being with other people who are doing that as well. And I'll pass it to Jalen.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jalen. I'm 11 years old, and I normally like to spend my time playing with my friends, online, and doing tennis. I've been homeschooled my whole life. I did preschool for 1 week, but my mom didn't really like it, so she took me out, and I've just been doing homeschool since then. And I also really like spending time with my dog. I love spending time with him. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Thank you both. Dominique, are you ready to introduce yourself? I know you just got here. Thank you for making it work. Sorry about the Zoom issues.
No worries. I'm always late to the party. Are we has Ira gone? Everybody's okay.
Everyone's gone. Yeah.
And the last person. Okay. My name is Dominique. I am raising 2 free Black children, going to be 17 in a week. I don't know how that happened. Please, those who have those, let me know how that happens. And then a 12-year-old. And they both have very different experiences around school. And we will talk about that more as we start. And I'm also, I don't know if this has been said, but I would love to hear questions because there's so many different ways that I could go with this. Ira and I have done this once before, and I felt like there were so many questions afterwards, and then it's oh, we have to end. So please, it doesn't mean we'll get to everything, but please put those in the chat, and that may direct the conversation.
Yeah. Not all the questions that I have here have to be asked either. If people want something else, great. Go that direction. So if you can each briefly share your family's self-directed education journey or your own self-directed education journey and what that has looked like. Jalen, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can. So basically, I started off, I didn't really do any much classes. I did online classes, but I was never really with a group or anything. I started off when I moved to California. I started doing Hickman, and that was a group where we would meet 3 times a week, I think, and we would do projects art and stuff like that. And then I had a teacher I would meet with every once in a while. And then after a little while later, I moved to Valley View, which is a charter school. And basically, it's kind of like Hickman, but they have classes that I can do with them, like math and science. And I also do Liberated Kids, and that's a nonprofit that's like with other kids, and we're like self-directed, and we can choose how we want to spend our days, and like do projects and go places and stuff like that. So that's basically my journey so far.
Thank you. Dominique?
So with my oldest, I should start by saying that before we had the language of SDE or unschooling or natural learning, we were kind of embodying this. It was something that my partner and I talked about even before we had kids. So I like that you asked that, Bria. Like, it's a journey as much, if not more so, for us as it is for our kids. And then with my oldest, though we didn't know it, unschooled for like the first 7 years. And then I had the fright that I think some people experience, where a little figure will come in and say, well, they're not reading yet. What are you doing? And so, of course, because you don't have community and support as I do now on the back end, I put her in school. And it was an Ocean Charter School. We're also in California, Jalen. We're in LA, which is a Waldorf-based charter school. And with my second child, which was very interesting, she chose school and continues to choose school since, I would say, since 3, because every time my daughter went to school, she was crying. And it wasn't, at first I thought it was like, oh, she's just missing her sister, which is part of it, but she just really wanted to be in school. And so I had to do a lot of maneuvering, and she ended up going a year earlier than I wanted her to, years earlier than I wanted to. I never really wanted her to. I joke that if I wasn't doing SDE, I'd be homeschooling her. Like, if she didn't have her own choice, I would keep her home. And we'll talk more about that, but that's kind of the interesting paradox of them going to school and doing this SDE. So she's been in it since she was 4. And it's been like, we're still in kind of the up and down of it, but yeah, that's our journey in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. I've been thinking about this, and Dominique, it's so great to see you. It's so funny how you make friends in these online communities, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I miss you.
Same.
And thank you for sharing about your journey, Jalen. A lot of our friends went to Hickman, and I think we were in Valley View at a little bit of time. My family story is I am not a self-identified homeschooler, like, in the sense that I was like literally I was teaching in preschools and elementary schools, and my thought was that I would be a community schooler and a community parent, and I would show up at public school. I knew that my kids would always go to public school, and I would show up and I would help in the classroom because I have the capacity and the time, and I'm willing to like shift my life that way, right? And then I put my kids in a preschool that I was working at because I wanted to know what the teachers were like on their worst days. Do you know what I'm saying? And I loved this preschool, and I put my kids in it. They were, when I say I put my kids in it, like, we went to go visit, and I was like, you all want to do it? And they were like, yeah. And our family, from the beginning, I knew that there was a lot that my family did when I was a kid that I really appreciated. And I knew from the beginning of having kids that I wanted to encourage my children's autonomy, because part of the anti-colonialism work that I do is to really understand that children are people, right? And like that doesn't seem revolutionary to me, but it is in this world, right? So children are people, and my job as a parent is to help, yes, give them the learning of my people, but also to invite them to be their full selves, whatever that looks like. And so even, by like 3 months old, they were signing whether they wanted their diapers changed or not, right? Like that we were in communication and in relationship the whole time, because my goal was always to listen to them, right? So they wanted to go to this preschool. It was really great. It was like chickens and 3 different play yards. And my friend Tony did cello stories in the classroom. And I did like this really crazy like movement theater dance thing. Like it was like if you could picture what it would be like to live in Berkeley, that's what this school was like, right? And then my ex at the time, who was my partner, got into grad school in LA, and we moved to LA, and I was traveling and commuting for work. And I put them in a preschool down there that they wanted to go to and they loved. And this preschool, like we moved across the street to go there. And it was just this terrible experience. And they wouldn't let my kids play together because they're twins. And that was like the philosophy. And I had to get a doctor's note to bring their own food. I was like, what the, what's going on here? And I was like calling my parents and my friends, crying every day. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know if I should take them out. I know that I want to do public school, but this is not what I imagined. And they were like, yeah, this is actually what public school is like. And my friends were all homeschoolers and unschoolers. And they were like, we think you're a homeschooler. And I was like, no. And I moved back to Berkeley to go to public school. And in kindergarten, we had that same experience. And it was just so mortifying to me that I spent 6 months deschooling myself. And then I took my kids out of school and we decided to do a lot of other community school stuff. And so that was how we started our journey.
Thank you all for sharing that. So when did you first know as parents that your kids were thinking about going to conventional school or back to conventional school? And then for Jalen, like when did you know that you wanted to try this out and what made you decide that?
So for me, for wanting to try it is because I've always like read books, watched movies, seen stuff, and sometimes I think about going like to high school and like a conventional school, or if I want to do homeschool and I can't decide. And I just think that when I think about it, starting high school, doing school for the first time ever, like unschooled, would just feel really different because it would just feel like, I don't know, weird starting off at high school where most of the important stuff happens there. And one of the reasons, and that's like kind of one of the reasons I want to do middle school is so I can like have the experience to be able to move to high school. And I'm also just thinking, what if I just want to do it for the experience? Like seeing how it is and like if I actually like doing it or if it's just like a not for me kind of thing. And that's basically it. That's why I want to try it. But yeah, that's just why I wanted to try it.
Is it okay if I go after you, Jalen? Because
Mhm.
my kids had the same thought, which is
Okay.
why
Yeah.
we started community schooling.
Okay.
They wanted to go to middle school, and they actually knew that they wanted to go to high school.
Right.
Um, and so we did a community school first, and then we moved to a public. We did like a revolutionary charter, and then a public school. And one of the things that's been really cool is that my kids know that if they don't want to go to school anymore, they don't have to. but they really wanted the experience of school that their friends were going to have, and they wanted a bigger pool of kids to like be friends with and hang out with. And so that has been really good for them. And even just this week, my kids are in high school now. They're in 10th grade at 2 different schools because they have different interests. And there are parts of it that they love. They love being with their friends. They love learning. And there are parts of it that they don't like. They don't like some of the rules and the ways that they're structured. They don't like some of the injustice that's in the school. And we navigate that every day and like talk about it. So, for anyone who is going to school, for you, Jalen, or anyone else who's considering going to school, I really recommend that you know that there are going to be things that you're not going to like, and to be able to talk about them and make decisions. My kids wanted to commit for a certain period of time. And I was like, you can leave anytime. And they were like, that doesn't actually help us. We want you to support us to commit for a certain period of time so we can have the experience all the way through. And then when we're done with that, then we want to have a conversation about whether to go or not go. And if we're ever done, we'll tell you. And so I really appreciated that because I did not know. I was like, you can leave anytime. Like anytime a conflict came up, I was like, it's okay, you can drop out. And they're like, we're not helping. So my kids have taught me a lot actually in this process. But yeah, just to like know, and for the parents out there whose kids are thinking about going back to school, like you're going to watch your children experience things that you don't want them to. And how to navigate that and how to decide when to intervene and when not to is a really intricate process. And I am a revolutionary. Some of my children's teachers love that. Some of them are a little bit afraid of me. My kids know that I will show up at school and do whatever needs to happen. I mean, not like, but like I will talk to whoever needs to get talked to, and I will stay there if I needed to, right? And so they know that I have their back, and they go to school with the confidence to navigate that because they know that I'm not going to step in unless they ask me to, or if I see something that I really don't like, that I'll let them know before I sort of do things or take over. And that is like that to me, that's what it means to be supporting my kids' self-directed education.
I always love when Iris speaks. I want to speak more to what they said than the original question, which I'm already forgetting anyway. Sorry, Bria. That notion of got their back, and that shift, and it speaks to also the learning that we all do as parents, that this is as much, if not more so, our work, and they're teaching us, right? Because I think what's so interesting about doing this work and having a child or children in school is the very word unschool starts to happen. Like the way they show up and the way you're leaving space for that is undoing some of the schoolishness that you have in your own mind and thoughts and fears, and working through that as well. And similarly, I don't know if I necessarily said you can drop out at any time, because I think I'm also that kind of like, we would commit to a year. Like when I take that seriously, when you have to have the intent to go back, I will really have us reflect over that past year and the goals or intentions or agreements that we had at the beginning of the year. How much did they align? How much rupture did we experience? How did we resolve that rupture? How much stuff is unresolved? But I do often say to my kids, you don't have to go to school today. And so if they wake up and they're like, you don't have to give excuses. No is a complete sentence. You don't have to fake being sick or any of those kinds of things. And I think that's really important. And it creates, again, that freedom and autonomy within the structure that's not as free, because it also invites them to listen to their bodies and understand, okay, I know how I need to show up in the school environment that I'm in, and I'm just not there today. And so instead of feeling like I got to force myself, as we often do feel, because we think a commitment means commitment the entire time, there should always be room to renegotiate what that means. And I want them to have the space to be able to do that. So I'm sure we could talk a lot more about that if people are interested, but that's what I love digging into. And I felt like questions came up in the village when we had this conversation is, so how do you deal with this? Or how do you deal with that? And I'm glad that Ira kind of framed it as it is this ongoing conversation. And if you aren't already establishing that communication with your child or children, this would be the time to do that. Because that will be the container from which all of the things that you navigate in the school experience are going to happen. And I know that didn't answer the question, but yeah, there we go.
I said yesterday there's no right answers and there's no wrong answers because we're not in school. But yeah, go wherever it takes you. I do want to ask Jalen quickly before we move on to another question. Do you have anything you want to add about like what it would look like for you, for your parents to have your back, or like what you want from your parents if you did end up going to conventional school?
I think that I would like them to huh, I would like them to be able to like give me like confidence, I should say, and like trying it because sometimes I get nervous about doing stuff. Like I was nervous about doing this a little bit, but they give me confidence a lot, and I like when they do that because it helps me out a little bit when I'm doing stuff. So I think I hope that answered your question. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Whatever you feel you need is the answer. And I like that you all just jumped right into this very real, deep, important part of kids going to school. Are there other like internal conflicts and struggles and mindset shifts that came up for you when your family started school, or when they were thinking about it, or when you yourself started thinking about it?
I'm gonna admit I didn't hear the question because I'm so on this phrase that Jalen just said about give me confidence. Because I'm one of those people that loves words, and because he said it slowly, and thank you so much for saying that, I thought of the word give as in gift. And I'm about to put it in the chat. I think I'm very interested in how do we give, as parents and caregivers, children confidence. I want to believe that I know what that is, but now I'm like sitting here like, well, let me sit back, let me pause. How do we do that?
Can I say, Dominique?
Yeah, please.
When my kids told me that, like, me being like, you can leave anytime you want, was like actually undermining their confidence, it really like it stopped me in my tracks a little, honestly, because I want the very best for my kids, whatever that means, right? Like in our context. And I didn't realize that I was instilling in them self-doubt by doubting what they say that they want, right? And the whole point of self-directed education is to listen to your kids and to support them in making it possible, right? And I think about, when my kids were really little and I wanted to feed them more, right? And they wanted to feed themselves, right? And like there are these windows where you learn certain skills, right? And our kids, where you are, Jalen, and where my kids are in the period of time where you're supposed to be having your own journeys and being held and supported by the village, right? And I think like understanding that my children will be in the world sometimes on their own and they can call on me anytime, right? But we're both getting used to me waiting in this new way for them to call on me rather than me stepping in, is one of the ways that I give the gift, right? That I say to you, I am confident in your abilities because I'm here on the side, but I'm not stepping in until you say,
I'm over here just making a list from the chat and what you said, and this document will go out later because we need all the tools and toys, right? Especially if our parenting, I definitely can speak for myself, didn't look that way. Absolutely. What you're saying, Ira, is like how my mom showed up was very much to do things for me. And for a while that feels really good and it feels like love, but it only gets you so far. And it doesn't, someone just said risk-taking, appropriate risk-taking. And I love that because so much of this is that. But if everything is done for you, you're not getting that kind of emotional memory, muscle memory around what that looks and even feels like. So, Bria, ask your question again though, because I'm sure it was a good one. I just totally missed it. So repeat it.
I want to hear how Jalen gets this gift.
Yeah, I mean, I also just want to let you all go at it and take us where it's going to go. I will ask it, but if something else speaks to you, take us there because we do not need to go through these lists of questions if it's something else today. It was what internal conflicts or mindset shifts or struggles, and you've named some of them, but if any others have came up for you when this idea of your kids or your family or yourself going to school was brought up, and like with them in school now, what other internal struggles are happening for you?
I can take this one. So I already named the first struggle, which is, well, if I'm unschooling and my kid is in school, am I doing this wrong? I mean, everyone I was around was literally, and at these SDE conferences in the chat, put it down. And hey, I will hand you the match and the lighter, like I get it. And I'm also recognizing, but my kid goes to that place you want to burn down. And I am struggling with, and I think what has come up for me is, and I've said this to some of my friends who are doing this work, is it's so important that we are diverse and everybody does different things. And my partner is an architect, so I speak in that architect language. And I think I'm more of the person who's in the blueprint. There are some people who are like wrecking ball, let's knock it down, all the things. And I'm like, let me give you all the tools. And I'm also in that place of, we've had also experiences of burning, breaking things down. And because maybe there was so much energy and all hands on deck for doing that, we didn't take time to think about what's going to go in its place. And so then we find ourselves just doing a 2.0 or a 3.0 version of the thing we just burned down. It's a little bit better. We still got a lot of work. So I am challenged. And I think this SDE lens is what allows me to look at it as challenges rather than just like, this is impossible, I don't want to do it. To reimagine how all of this can work, how SDE can actually work. Because, and I also say we can't have a talk without it, bringing up Akila. And I will say probably the biggest eye-opening challenge was the section where she talks about her children are now, out of the school system. I think they're in some place, either they're going to be overseas or not overseas. Anyone who's read the book, Raising Three People. And her children come to her and say they want to go back to school. And she takes you on the journey of where her brain went. Her kids are still talking and the partner is still listening, but she's somewhere else. She's like, say what now? I went through all of this work, like everything you could possibly think when you've done the work to exit this space. And now the people that you thought you were quote unquote saving or sparing want to go back. And that gave me an aha moment, because I realized, now going back to my narrative. So with my first child, as I said, I put her in, and I put her in with fear. So there was no choice for her. And when you do things out of fear, there's not really a choice for you. She loved it though. She really loved it. She's neurospicy. And so they do a lot of things well. There's a lot of things they don't. There's no spaces for neurospicy. And I love it. There's something that Ira said in terms of when the way I saw that is like protecting their experience, because we can really, I am also that similar parent. I will come down. Who do I need to talk to? What's going on? You know, of course with love, but I'm that parent. And I will never forget in third grade, the second grade year was magical. Third grade, we're having our IEP, or like it's an unofficial meeting that I sat. And I will never forget the teacher saying, your child isn't at a third grade reading level or third grade level. I only teach third grade. They need to go to a special day school. I still remember those words still to this day. They are kind of like the phoenix, because I was in this space of like, wait, I thought we got this. This was magical. What's happening? And then I had to learn also, like, that wasn't even her place to say. This is a team effort. When you're doing IEP, individualized educational plan, it's a team effort. Did all of us agree? Is that even what this meeting is about? And so the next 4 years at that school was me fighting for her, fighting to be seen and heard and all of those things, right? And I'm not going to take you through the whole journey. That's like a whole nother Zoom and conversation. But I then pulled her at the beginning of 6th grade, because I felt like all the scaffolding that I had built, which did work a bit in 5th grade, was beginning to fall apart again. And I was like, I can't do this. And I pulled her and I put her in what was like it was a public charter, but it was a homeschool charter. It's called Da Vinci up in Hawthorne, California. She did not want to go. But because she is what I call very much a get along girl, she really contained that and just was like, okay, well, this is what my parents are doing, and I guess that's what's best. But I knew deep down she didn't really want to go, but I felt like it was best. And so she showed up physically, maybe a little bit mentally, but not in the other things. Homeschooling under that lens was way harder than what we had done prior. And by the way, when I homeschool, when a kid's in school, like learning doesn't stop just because it's 3 o'clock. Like we kept learning at home and doing stuff. So that's how the SDE kind of came in. But then when I read this book, I went to my daughter. By this point, she's in the middle of 8th grade. And I said, did you want to go to Da Vinci? Did you want to leave Ocean? And it was almost as if I'd opened a door of a floodgate, because she was like, no. And she's not a person to cry and be emotional, but all these tears came, not tears. I mean, I'm sure it was a lot of sadness and other things, but it was just release. And then I cried, and it was this really very emotional moment. And that day we were supposed to have a meeting with IEP, and I had to come in thinking we were going to do about all the IEP stuff. And then instead I was saying, so we're actually not going to continue this, because it's occurring to me that my daughter never wanted to leave, and we're going to try to get back in. And was so lucky that there was one spot in the same class that she was in, and she was able to re-enter. And again, this is the neurospicy child. In 8th grade Waldorf, it's very fast. There's this huge annual project you do. It's all different types of levels. And she's missed the first half of that. Trust me, she knocked it out of the water. Because this is where she wanted to be. Not because she had all the prep and the academic, but that's where she wanted to be. And so I don't know if that explains it, but that's the big struggle. All these other pieces, but the bigger part is understanding that when your kids go out in the world, whether it's school or whatever, it's their experience, and we're here to support and guide and, as Jalen so well said, give them confidence as if it's something we're handing over to them. Just so hard. It's so hard. Thanks for letting me share
Anybody
that.
else want to
I know
sing?
it was a little longer than
Amen. 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 Yes, Dominique.
I love you.
I kind of want to say something. It's not really about like school. It's, I mean, it is a little bit, but it's like sometimes I have like big ideas for things I want to do, and like one second, and then sometimes I don't want to do stuff, and sometimes I have like projects, but it gets lonely. So I first thing I normally do is I go to my friends, ask them, "You guys want to do this?" Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. And for the hardest part for me is like finding a community that wants to like do similar stuff. It doesn't have to like all be my stuff. But, like I actually really enjoy coding, but I'm not like the best at it. I've not really found like a community for that. And it's not sometimes it's not just coding. Sometimes it's like other things. Like for a long time, it took me a really long time to find a really good tennis class. And now basically I know everyone there and we're all like good friends. And it just sometimes it takes me a long time to actually find a group or community to do stuff with.
I love that you brought that up, Jalen. Um, you know, can I tell you a little bit about our experience with that group stuff? When my kids left school after kindergarten, I kept them in kindergarten because I was also in school. I was finishing my degree, and I wanted to take time to do some deschooling of myself and like some grieving. Like I had a lot of grief, and I still do in some places, but like the level of grief that I had about school not working for us was one that I was not expecting, right? Like I had this really, so as a parent, as a person, I had to do this stuff and I wanted my kids to have something else to do. And we worked it out so that I changed my whole schedule actually. And I put all my classes in the afternoon when they were in their after school art program. And I was on call and on campus and teaching during the day while they were in school, not necessarily in their classroom, but just like nearby because it was a hot mess at Malcolm X School in Berkeley, which is one of the places that has Berkeley Unified School District has one of the worst outcomes for Black students in the country. So and then when we stopped, I had the benefit because I've been teaching a long time and I've been doing camps. I was able to create a camp that does like our outdoor education values and other things. And so we had the whole time my kids were unschooling, they had a group of kids who we were doing projects together, right? Like we were in a village, doing projects together, doing things, what we call learning to do dangerous things in safe ways, right? Like learning how to light fires, learning how to shoot arrows, learning how to use knives, learning how to climb trees, learning how to talk to the trees about whether they want to be climbed or not. Because if you don't talk to them first, the branch might break because it's not strong enough to hold you, right? Like there's all this stuff that we do in the world, learning how to boat, learning how to do map making and wayfaring and all these things, right? Like very much in groups of kids together. And I think that is part of the appeal of school, is that as much as I want to like, I'm sort of like thinking about like how to navigate this here in this context. I have a specifically Indigenous and revolutionary framework for my learning, which means that as a countercultural person, right, like I am actually invested in my village. I'm not invested in myself, in the sense that like I'm not interested in being independent. I'm not interested in being a person on the prairie. I'm not interested in being someone who like goes out, right? Like I'm interested in being in the village and creating and expanding the village. And so it's a very different framework, right? And so if you put self-directed learning inside the context of the village, it looks different than if you put self-directed learning inside the context of colonialism, right? Like those are very different contexts. And we're all in here trying to figure that out together. But there are people who are on the prairie and there are people who are in the village. And we don't actually have the same goals, right? And so, and you don't have the same needs for your survival, right? And when you have a village of people, right, which is my interpretation of what you said, Jalen, is like having people who are sort of doing projects together, like having the same goals, right? Like, you know, we've built boats, we've built giant, like park-sized Rube Goldbergs, right? Like, you know, we've built like literal villages and like tiny village houses and, you know, reclaimed structures. Anyway, it's been really fun to do that. And I think that one of the unique things about school is that generally all of the children, or at least a large group of the children, have the same assignment. So they're in the same boat, going the same direction. And they love that. They love having that village, right? And what I want is to be part of my children's village. I don't want them to just be led by other people into a village that I don't even want them to be in, or onto a prairie that I don't even want them to be in, right? And so there is a lot of like contextualizing for me that happens that I am free to do when I'm not consumed by fear, Dominique, right? What you're talking about, that I'm more free to do. And I can invest in creating those relationships and supporting those relationships, you know? I can step back and one of my kids is in a carpool twice a week with 3 friends going to the same place, and another parent does it, and I never do it. Like literally, I never do it. And that's not my style, but it's me relying on the village that we're creating, right? And I do other things for them. I show up with food later, right? That like part of being in a village is understanding that you not being there doesn't mean that your values aren't being held there. And that's what I'm looking for as a parent, is knowing that wherever my children are, they're still able to hold my values. And if I am in fear all the time, it's very difficult for them to receive those values and hold them when they're in other places, right? And so for me, self-directed learning is also always in the context of the village and in the family. And that my unschooling process has been largely about finding the place in me where schoolishness, where colonialism, where capitalism has made me sick, literally, right? Like made me unable to be present for what my children are trying to get support from me in. Does that make sense? Like, and
yes.
So,
I
right?
saw
like, and so
lots
like,
of hearts, lots of fires. Lots of affirmation. I know it's hard when you're speaking. You're like, is anyone here?
No.
Yes.
Well, like,
I'm
watching the comments, and some people are like, yes, but like, what are you talking about? I'm using these metaphors, and for me, it's not a metaphor because I am autistic, right? So literally everything I say is literal. But I'll give you one example. actually about literal, and then I'm going to be quiet for a little while. So when we talk about mathematical concepts and philosophical concepts and arguing and wrestling, right? Like we talk about them all in the context, right? So the Rube Goldberg project, we did a whole week of Rube Goldbergs, which are those things where like you set up the dominoes and then the dominoes knock over the cart and the cart swings over here and then it goes and pushes something else. And at the end, it like pops the toast, right? Like, it's not, it's like you do this like really intricate, complicated machine where everything is on some sort of fulcrum or tipping point, and when it gets to tipping point, it makes the next thing happen, right? And so we were talking about that in the context of like, how do you think? How do you do mathematics? How do you do physics? How do you solve problems? How do you solve disagreements? How do you solve arguments, right? Like we were talking about all of this all the same the whole week while we're doing Rube Goldbergs, because we need a literal foundation for these theoretical concepts, right? And all of our children who did the Rube Goldberg week know what it feels like in your body when you are at the tipping point and when you fall over and you can't stop yourself anymore, right? And so that same group of kids were having that same conversation now about drugs and sex and peer pressure, right? Because they have this very literal places in their bodies. And then the kids who didn't do Rube Goldberg were starting to do a programming, a coding workshop with one of the trans robotic people. I don't know. I don't even understand what they're doing, right? I'm just like, yes, come on. And they're like burning wood and soldering things, right? And so to give them that physical experience, right? And I think what you're looking for and what every person is looking for, especially when you're young and like getting all this information in order to make decisions about how you're going to be in the world as an adult, you need those lived experiences of being in a group of people all doing the same thing. And if it happens to be that your family is unschooling or deschooling or self-directed and your kid wants to go back to school, it's not about you being wrong or bad or not doing enough. It's about your child has enough confidence to know what they want and tell you. And let us be grateful for that.
I'm lost in everything you said, all of you. But Ira, you actually just answered this question that I really wanted to make sure we got to, which is, what would you want to share with parents whose young people are expressing the desire to attend conventional school? And I think that applies to you too, Jalen. Like, what do you want to say to parents of kids like you who want to attend school? And what do you want to say to the kids who might be thinking about it?
I would like to say that you have to try new things. And when you try new things, there's going to be ups and downs. But for the most part, just try to enjoy yourself and have fun. I like try to have a little fun whenever I'm trying to do anything. So yeah, that's what I would say to them.
Oh, sorry, I'm like typing what you just said. I'm
Oh.
notorious for that.
Also to the parents, I would say that you have to trust in your child, because normally they look up to you and they believe that you think that they're doing the right thing. So that's just from my kid's like view of things. I don't really look up to my parents, so I think that if you like encourage them and like do things that would like help their decision, not like force them, but like that would definitely help them like want to do more things or do things like you. That's all I'm gonna say. That's for like the favorite part.
Jalen, you're an inspiration. I'm so, I just wrote a kid's view is the most needed view when he said, well, this is the kid's point of view. Like a kid's view is the most needed point of view right now everywhere in the world. So just acknowledging and validating and appreciating. I didn't know, I thought it was going to be me and Ira. I am so pleasantly surprised that Jalen is here, and I really appreciate that he came. And I have so I'm gonna come back to that. I'll put that at the end. But to answer the question, so especially when he was talking about journey and having fun with it, because after that story that I shared, and now being in this space of, again, like play, right? That's an aspect of fun and liberation. Nina Simone would say, freedom is no fear. So I'm trying my best to work through that as things come up. And so my daughter, my youngest now, a week before sixth grade, because it's a K through 8, and I felt lucky and lazy that I didn't have to worry about a middle school, that I could just be here and only have to think about high school as the next step if that's what they want to do. But a week before sixth grade, she wrote me this very long, beautiful, introspective text where she's like, I really love where I'm at, and I love ocean and all these different reasons, but I'm ready for something new. I'm ready to try new things, as Jalen just said. And so I'm thinking about a new school. And then I also had that split, like Akila had, like half of me was like, listen, I don't want to look, we're a week before school. I don't want to do this right now. But then most of me, because of the liberation work that I'm doing and continue to do, was like, okay, I can't do it right now because we are about to start school sixth grade, but I'm going to keep my ears and eyes and heart open. And I was doing some training around like coming together in a circle for social justice. And we find ourselves at this school called New Roads. And I wasn't looking, I swear I wasn't looking, but just more and more, this place just made an impression on me. And so, similar to Ira, I said, so there's this space. Yes, ancestors, goodness. And I want to be very clear, this is a private school. So fear all over the place. Fears around money, prestige, all of those things. But here's the thing, and I feel like this group would appreciate it. I went to the, that day I had a chance to talk to the woman who runs the middle school, and I said, what's your school about? Because, all these private schools, they're either STEM or STEAM or adding more letters, or it's about sports or whatever. So what's your school about? And she's like, well, we have all of those things, but really we're interested in the child and what they want to do. I said, say what now? Say that one more time. I just want to be clear. Like, she didn't use quote unquote our language. She never said unschooled, self-directed, but it was all the essences of it. And the program, most of it is electives. So you know how like in most schools, maybe you have one elective for the whole semester or the whole year. And that was my daughter's thing. It's like, but mom, I like aerial silk, but I also like volleyball, and I like robotics, and I like theater, and I like costumes. And there's no space for all of that, even though that's what she wants to do most of the time. This school had all those things, even things we'd never heard of. And so when I showed that to her, she just was excited. She's like, we need to go to a tour. I was like, do we need to? Okay, we need to. And so we went to a tour. And here's the other piece, especially when I think about the culture and race piece. So for those of you really quick, who are familiar with Waldorf, there's 3 words that are often said to describe Waldorf, is that it's wealthy, weird, and white. And it's a very specific kind of white. I don't know why. I think the ancestors gave me a stamina for it, because it's not something that I requested, but I'm like one of the last that is left in this space. And we haven't had, I mean, you know, who knows when you have a racist experience, but it wasn't in our face until maybe about 2 months ago. There was a child in the school. There's this thing that's going around where people say he or she is not a 10, but, and we already know that phrase is very problematic. And the thing that was said was, this person's a 10, but they're Black. Now I feel like ancestors were protecting us because our child wasn't there that day. Because that was a day where she's like, I don't feel like going to school. And I said, that's a whole sentence. You don't have to. And there were a couple of her friends who heard this boy say that and went to the teacher. And I have to admit, as schools go and all the things, I know a time and a place and a school that I would go to that wouldn't even, quote unquote, the right things. Who knows what the right things are, but the principal was contacted. They had a circle around it, all of the different things. There's a lot of different things that they did, and I was grateful for it. I was also, but mostly grateful, especially when you talk about village, Ira, is that we had already done that agreement of we don't need to be anywhere we don't need to be. And so if I was in that schoolish mindset of, well, we show up because we have to show up, then intuition wouldn't have come in to say, actually, we don't need to show up here today because some stuff is going to go down. And that gave us an opportunity to have the village conversations. We have my partner and I with them first, because ain't nobody going to talk to them about what their Blackness and who they are is. And again, with well intention, but two teachers that are white, they were very much like, we're going to make sure that they, you know, and sometimes even in the help, that's the problem. I don't want my child to be considered some kind of victim in this situation. That's not how we raise our kids. Some others, no judgment, but that's not how we raise them. So, my heart is beating. So going to the New Roads, when we went on the tour, I should also say, she has been the only Black girl in her class, and the class continues in Waldorf. You stay with the same class as first grade all the way through. There was another Black boy in the class. He left in fifth grade. So for a while, she was the only Black child in the class. And it's interesting when you have two children and how they see their Blackness, because my other daughter, I guess luck of the draw, had a more quote unquote diverse class, 4 or 5 other Black kids, a couple Asian Americans, mixed race, but this class has been very heavy with whiteness. And as a protection, that's why I'm all up in there. So when we went to New Roads, it's kind of a choose your own adventure, which I loved. And you go to the different classrooms instead of them directing your tour. And we went to the room, there was a mathematics. That's my daughter's favorite subject. It's another thing that I had to protect within the protection, because we know the experience of Black girls when it comes to math. And the two kids who were leading that space were 2 Black girls. And I could already see my daughter getting so excited, but she's shy, so she kind of kept it contained. And so I asked them all the questions that I knew she wanted to ask. I said, so do you all like math? Oh yeah, we love math. And for all the reasons that my daughter does. And I said, what else are your electives? Oh, we love theater, we love animation, we love robotics. Daji couldn't contain herself. And I left it alone. Again, like somebody said, we have to wait for them to come to us. And so now we're going through the process of applying and all of that. It's not for the faint of heart. I do not wish it on anybody, and yet I'm here. And I was checking in with her, and I said, so how are you feeling about, going to the school? And she's getting more and more excited, but trying to keep it cool, because, it's private. They decide. But she's like, but if I go, I'm going to be friends with those 2 Black girls. And she hasn't had a chance to be in a space where she sees herself. We've created the village, and my mom did the same thing in our space, right? And I guess now that I think about it, I guess I've been in a lot of predominantly white spaces where I may be the few or the only. And then to balance it, my mom put me in lots of different things to reinforce. And I never felt any kind of way other than like everything that I am is Black. Even when people might call me an Oreo or whatever, like everything that I am. Yes, I listen to Radiohead and I'm Black. I don't know what the problem is.
Oh my gosh, you're killing me right now.
It's a very specific conversation.
the Blackbirds come through.
I know we're at the end, so I'm gonna wrap this up. So for me, this thing that would have been so fearful with all the stuff around private school, and it's like, again, that conversation of like, well, wait, I'm doing SDE. If there's anything that's supposed to be the opposite of SDE is a private school. And yet they're all about authentic diversity. They're like, there's just, I can't even go into how impressed, and I know there's going to be issues because I'm always prepared for that. But the way, again, your children light up when they're in a space, when they know, oh yeah, this is community. This is where I want to be. And the last quick thing I want to say, I want to share a little quote because Jalen inspired me when he said, I didn't know if I really wanted to be on this call, but my parents and also part of himself wanted to do it. And it's something around courage, which is a word that I'm like getting really excited about again, because it comes from, I think, some language at heart. And this is from a quote from Terrence McKenna. Who quote Terrence? Nature loves courage. You make the commitment and nature will respond to that commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream and the world will not grind you under. It will lift you up. This is the trick. This is what all the teachers and philosophers who really counted, who really touched the alchemical gold, this is what they understood. This is the shamanic dance in the waterfall. This is how magic is done. By hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a feather bed. I really love that. So that's getting me through.
Thank you. We are past time, but beyond worth it. I do want to leave space for our Zoom out, but is there any last final words, hopefully short words, I apologize, that anyone here wants to share?
I'm glad you guys invited me. I really enjoyed this, and I'm glad I was able to talk with you guys and listen to. So thank you.
Thank you, Jalen. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all for showing up. Dominique, after this, there's a request if you can share that quote in the chat, if you do have it handy. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. I read you.
It was really a pleasure to be on the panel with you, Jalen and Dominique. Thank you, Bria, for hosting, and thanks for all of the great comments and questions in the chat. And if folks want to reach out, Ira X Armstrong on Instagram and Peace Out Loud on the web.
I don't know how you can reach me. I'm just going to say, let's do this again. This is the second version that Ira and I have done. We could do this for days. Wouldn't you say, Ira? Maybe. Let me not speak.
Number from Damari, because we're gonna have coffee soon.
Oh, apparently we're doing this offline. So
yeah,
we'll get back
no one
to you
else
all.
is invited. Send us a podcast of just your coffee chats, please.
That would be so fun.
Come on, wait, Dominique. I do have a thing. I have a podcast. It's called Birthing in Color. I can actually like say a thing, the things that I will put it in the chat. But yeah, I have a thing.
All right. I think we're going to be unpinned and go into our break.